We will be starting in about 1 minute. Just so you know where we are super excited to talk about reimagining the education experience for students. When I think about this topic, I think about all the things we do and how innovative we could be for our young people as we talk about what the global society looks like in the next 10, 20 years, and how do we prepare our youth to be ready for that. So as we get started, welcome, Dr. Mark Daniel and Ramona Coleman. We are happy to have you here with us this morning. Just a little bit about each one of these amazing educational leaders. Dr. Mark Daniel joined Fort Wayne Community Schools as the 15th superintendent on July 1st, 2020. He is a 1979 graduate of Northside High School, making him the second superintendent to come from Fort Wayne as alumni. His first teaching job was at Northside High School also, where he taught advanced algebra, geometry, business law, accounting, and skills for living. And I'm thinking, Mark, what didn't you teach? He also has coached football, basketball, baseball, track, and golf. And what that tells me is he understands the whole child, right? We want to give them academic experience, but for sure we want to give them other experiences. And he has been engaged in the lives of students in the classroom and out of the classroom. He left Northside to become the assistant principal at Leo Junior High School in 1995 and took over as principal in 1988. And he held that position as principal for 12 years. In 2010, he became superintendent, and I'm going to mess this up, of Dowagiac Union Schools in Michigan, and a K-12 district with about 2,400 students. And in 2014, he was hired as superintendent of McLean County Unit District number 5 in Normal, Illinois, a K-12 school district with over 13,000 students. And the rest of the story is he came back home. And I love a story where we come back home and do our work, because home is where the heart is. So thank you for being with us, Dr. Daniel. Ramona Coleman started her education career at Taylor Independent School District in Taylor, Texas in 1983 as a special education teacher. She joined Fort Wayne in 1987 and taught at Kroninger Elementary School. And then she transitioned to Lane Middle School until she became a district coach in 2009. She then moved into her current role overseeing the professional learning department. In her new role as the assistant superintendent of professional learning, she recognizes the importance of the ongoing professional learning needs of new and veteran staff members. And as you have heard, between the two of them, they have a wealth of knowledge from K-12 backgrounds and students. So we are super happy to have you all here today. And as I said, I've shared my screen so you all can take over, and we are ready to learn a little more.
Good morning, everyone. All right, the first thing that we want to start out with this morning, again, just saying good morning to everyone, and wanted to share some data from our school district based upon numerous elementary schools that we used with one of the research firms to really see our data for our students based upon the implementation of professional learning and project-based learning within FWCS. So as the bullets are coming up that you can look at that's there, we can see that based upon the study with our several elementary schools, with this group, we had a control group that we looked at a group of schools, a group of schools that were implementing project-based learning, and a group of our elementary buildings that were not implementing project-based learning or their level of use. So we basically upon this study was able to see that there was an engagement among students and that increased engagement and motivation because of that learning experience that students were engaging in. This really did, the study that we looked at was inclusive of all ability levels, and all ability levels did benefit from project-based learning. We know that definitely that we want to look at those soft skills to see how much our students were having the opportunity to engage in collaboration with each other, really how they were pushing on each other's thoughts, pushing on each other's thinking when it came to critical thinking, and really that creativity level of seeing what was next for them. And so not being really provided that information, but giving them the opportunity to think outside the box as student learners based upon next steps. So this really did get at deeper learning for us, especially with those soft skills. Going a little bit deeper with our findings based upon this study is that we really want to make sure not just students' voice, but we want to look at what were we hearing from our teachers. So we actually want to look at basically how could we capture the voice of our adult learners. And so our teachers shared with us within this study that there were some challenges based upon this. And really, again, we know that time continues to be an issue within the school day of when do I plan this or integrate this within my curriculum. Really, the number of students and how they were going to monitor that student's progress. And some teachers have shared with us how they've made this very inclusive within their day and very inclusive within their curriculum. We did have to make sure that we were giving teachers more options and availability to engage in sessions after school when it came to project-based learning, and especially one resource or the defined learning platform that we were asking them to use. And then our teachers, very loud and clear, very boisterous, said we really need to make sure that based upon using the projects that we were asking them to use with their students, that there needed to be a predetermined link, or how did we really align this work to the curriculum that we were asking them to teach, facilitate with their students. So this was, again, I could say that teachers really shared the sentiment of making sure, shared by teachers, that the comments that I just shared, that they really, and the one that I would point out the most was that alignment with projects and with the curriculum, the scope and sequence of that curriculum, that they're being asked to facilitate with teachers in the class, with students in the classroom. So our big takeaways is that we know, again, that when it comes to looking at existed lit or research that was there, this team was very informative in helping us to know that we were very aligned as a district with that literature. Again, we learned again that basically for project-based learning to really work, and you want it to be very meaningful to your students and your district within your learning environment, teachers must see the connection between what you're asking them to do and the curriculum that's there. And so again, we want to make sure that professional learning component, professional development was really there so that teachers would have that experience to go along with it.
Let's do this together.
All right, and now we have Dr. Mark Daniels, Superintendent of Fort Wayne Community Schools. And now we're going to look at that vision approach of what is the vision for really looking at project-based learning and implementation of project-based learning within FWCS.
So one of the things that we decided was extremely important, as we all know, is how do you embed project-based learning into your everyday curriculum? So again, Ramona's been huge in this piece, but also we decided Define Learning, a tool that was definitely, I think, state of the art, provided that information for our teachers, and a system such that they don't have to go out to the web and start to search and find and spend countless hours, which eventually then deters their implementation because they just get tired. So I want to take that off their plate. So that's what led us to Define Learning. And we all know the benefits of project-based learning. How do you bring the curriculum to life and so on and so forth. So again, a great tool to do so. And as we say today, you know, what are we really, what's our business? You know, we're from Indiana, so we're in a very competitive marketplace. Voucher systems, charters. Matter of fact, I think privatization is the goal. So we have to compete. So the next slide, we'll just put it this way. You know, our business today is to educate all kids. And we have to do so by bringing all private partners and public partners together. So please observe this particular video for just a moment.
So when a strong public education system educates our children, essentially our tomorrow, those children end up giving back to that same system that strengthened and positioned them for success.
You know, in the last 10 years, Fort Wayne has done roughly $1 billion in economic development, created 22,000 jobs. That didn't include electric work. So I think in the next 5 years, we're going to be creating that many jobs. And we need people from Fort Wayne who can do all these jobs, that can fill the workforce.
When you have a healthy adults, you have healthy communities. You know, you can't produce healthy communities if adults are not having a pathway and understanding exactly what they need to do to be productive.
My why in regards to creating a scenario in Fort Wayne Community Schools that is sparking innovation and transformation is simply this. We have to produce graduates that are ready for the workforce, are ready for some type of post-secondary training. I would say both, because if we're going to continue to grow as a community, as Northeast Indiana, we need a viable workforce that is quality. And hopefully that brings investment.
I think the thing I'm most proud of is that Fort Wayne Community Schools is prioritizing and then really being intentional about bringing awareness and programs that are really going to hit those top line priorities. And I think that that's exciting because I think it'll be those programs that really do move the needle as far as a community and about preparing these students for next generation jobs.
So in regards to 5 key areas of moving students, where does it begin? Pre-K. So we begin with your pre-K programming, again, trying to level the field. We know that pre-K is a program that works, that if we can see little ones who are entering kindergarten at the same level, their chance of finishing at the end of that funnel is far greater than those who even start 2 months behind their peers. Because if they're 2 months behind their peers as kindergartners, they're 2 years behind their peers as 8th graders. Second of all, how do we focus on literacy? How do we focus on numeracy? And how do we focus on, well, I'll say, social emotional well-being of our students? If they don't have those 3 areas and they're competent in those 3 areas, what kind of graduate are we actually looking at? So we need to ensure that that happens. Thirdly, we also need to link what is real world. So how do we bring the real world into our classrooms? Because we know when we bring it to life, students engage. When students engage, student learning starts to amplify. That's a critical piece, which then leads to our whole college and career readiness. Now, college and career readiness is a very unique phenomenon because we started with pre-K at the front of the continuum, and now we're at the end of the continuum. Well, for me, college and career readiness starts in elementary. We need to start asking students and working with students and creating student passion about what are your interests, what are your attributes, what are your skill sets, how are we going to continue to expand those? And students, how do we move you through a curriculum that is guiding you to your future career? So that happens again in elementary, it happens in middle school, and it happens in high school. Our work doesn't stop at graduation. Matter of fact, our work actually continues. Our work still means what are they doing after high school and what's the success of that kid? We call that persistence rate. Are they attaining that certificate? Are they working 40 hours a week? Are they into a 2-year program or a 4-year college program? That's not for me to decide. That's for a student to decide, but our job is to assist them and mentor them even after graduation. That's a very different concept, but we just went through a whole continuum of pre-K to after high school. I can tell you, as I've looked at districts across the country, those who have created a way to bring the curriculum to life, that have created hands-on applications, project-based learning, things such as attendance increases, things such as grades increase. Also, discipline tends to decrease. Behavior is much more adult-like. And quite frankly, I think those are the things we want. I think if we do this, not only will Fort Wayne continue to be one of the fastest growing communities and cities in the Midwest, but why not the entire country?
If we deliver more 17, 18-year-olds ready to be great citizens, we're going to have the best version of Fort Wayne and the best version of Allen County.
So our mission in Fort Wayne Community Schools is simply this. We want to educate all students to high standards. Each student is important. Do we really believe each student can learn? Do we really believe each student should have, upon graduation, a pathway such that they can make a livable wage? I believe we do. We call that the culture of our district, and we believe culture wins.
Produced, and again, emphasizing how do you bring partners through the PBL into the classroom? And as you can see, those were community leaders and they've bought in. So we're definitely heading towards an academy structure. We're part of a network. We'll see this probably in 24, 25, where all the academies will be solidified with various steering committees and such. But I'll tell you, defined learning is a critical tool that brings into the classroom, and it's by standard, by subject, where we can finally, if we don't have the partner right there, we're bringing them in virtually. And then we can go out and search for those partners. Again, another way for us to make that happen. So there's a very brief idea of where our pipelines are. And again, we developed those because those are the high demand areas in Northeast Indiana. And of course, health-related services is number one, probably across the country. But there are also 5 others. And you'll notice teaching is one of them. We have to start bringing our students, we have to start molding them and mentoring them and moving them into the field of education. Because quite frankly, I think that's the only way we're going to deal with the shortage that we have. So again, this is what we believe, bringing the curriculum to life. And I think that passion engagement, and you're going to see some statistics here, I believe, briefly, in regards to what it's doing for our students in some of our schools.
So really, this slide and why project-based learning, and I know you chose this session today because either you're totally engaged or you have project-based learning being implemented in your learning environment within your school district. And so we wanted to start with this slide of what is project-based learning on this part of the session, because our teachers and our principals were asking, what is the common definition that FWCS want to use as we engage students within our communities around project-based learning? So we wanted that common language to be there. So we ask for the support with defined learning to say, as you were putting together this tool, as you were thinking about project-based learning and the integration of project-based learning within the curriculum, what were your thoughts around PBL? So we shared this based on their recommendation with our principals and with our teachers. And we basically first rolled this framework out with our coaches. So we really wanted them to look at that instructional methodology around PBL. And again, those soft skills that we even started out with around collaboration, the creativity, the critical thinking that we wanted our students to engage in. But the one thing that we wanted to make clear is that we wanted this to be an engaging experience for students. And we knew that PBL, again, according to this framework, this definition, would present those opportunities for deeper learning. Again, going back to reiterating what Dr. Daniel shared earlier, is that we know the number of asks that we request of our teachers on a regular basis is that we looked at defined learning as a tool that would truly support our teachers in the implementation of project-based learning. So instead of having to think of specific tasks for students to engage in, to give them those deeper learning opportunities, we gave them this resource to use, and then they helped us in return identify key projects within this structure that teachers could use that would be aligned to specific units, standards that they were teaching within their learning environment. So again, going back to the slide that you showed the different pipelines or Dr. Daniel shared around the business leaders that we want to connect with within FWCS, again, making those experiences for our students very enriched. We want to talk about 3 different programs. So here we have our AMP Lab at Electric Works, where basically students are engaged in project-based learning experiences on a daily basis, and they're connecting those experiences with the different pipelines that Dr. Daniel shared with you earlier. In addition to AMP Lab, we have our New Tech Academy that again, students select and choose to be a part of New Tech Academy. And within that learning experience, they have the opportunity to engage in deeper learning with their peers and with community members. Those community members come into their learning environment and also giving students both at New Tech and AMP Lab the opportunity to visit business communities in our area. And really, when you think about Shark Tank and other entrepreneurships that's out there, you can look at both of these in addition to 3DE that I'm going to have Dr. Daniel to speak to and address for us, because it's really huge within our district. And it really does connect with that work of AMP Lab and New Tech Academy.
So what we really need was something like
1 second. Dr. Daniel, people are saying your screen went black. Just want to make sure that people can see your screen.
Wait 1 minute. Is it okay now?
Maggie, can you see her screen?
Everything looks good.
Okay,
Yes, I think everything looks fine here.
So 3DE is taking New Tech, but making it across the entire district. So that would be a 9 through 12 type program. What we're doing around that is junior achievement. We have one of the most outstanding junior achievement programs in the country. So top 5. But with this, we're bringing our business partners to present a problem to our students. And those students then are solving a real world problem with business partners coaching them. And then they have competitions and so forth. It is rather phenomenal. We're finding out, first of all, why, because again, relevancy, but also what are the competencies or the soft skills we're trying to teach our students and ingrain in them. Things like cooperative, being able to work in teams, so collaboration, things like communication skills, critical thinking skills, and so on and so forth. So very pleased. Our results in this area has been, I will say, just phenomenal. But again, why is this important? And that's just an example. Because we need to bring the world into our classrooms. Everyone knows about New Tech. AMP Lab is a version of New Tech, but on steroids, if you will, primarily a junior senior program. But roughly 200 students in the AM, 200 students in the PM coming from our 5 high schools. And as such, again, linking students to real world problem solving applications. And I'll tell you, the response we've had from our business community has been, how can we do this throughout all of your high schools? How can we become more involved? And it's been actually, I think it's probably, Ramona, been far exceeded our expectations.
Yes.
But again, where do we still start this in the everyday curriculum in our traditional schools? That's defined learning.
And so basically we want to make sure that when we look at project-based learning, how does that align and fit within our multi-tiered system of support? When we look at the academic side and also the well-being side of MTSS. So we know basically we address that we know that for PBL, we have to be very intentional about making sure that there's time. What's the focus of the PBL and the specific type of PBL that we want to that's aligned to the curriculum and specific projects that will help students to understand those standards even at a deeper level and relate them to real world experiences. So based upon this, we wanted to make sure that when we look at MTSS, that project-based learning is not just for a few of our students or for some of our students, but we wanted to make sure that we focused on all of our students when we look through the lens of project-based learning, because we know that we want all of our schools, all of our students to be successful. We want them to be prepared for the day after graduation. And therefore we need to look at our students that, whether it's students that need intensive interventions, whether it's our students at the high ability level, whether it's our core students that we can see the green focus there in the middle. And that's why we place project-based learning in the middle, because we wanted to make sure that it was reaching all tiers. And then that green that you can see going around our MTSS system means all students need to be included and have the experience of project-based learning, and define learning as a tool that makes that readily available for all of our teachers and students. So we wanted to make sure that how do we really focus this work? And defined learning has been key in shaping and helping us to refocus our theory of action around project-based learning, and especially with our key stakeholders. We first need to make sure that, again, that's why Dr. Daniel and I are here together today, because cabinet level leadership truly has to set or did set the vision for this work within our district. And from Dr. Daniel, really listening to teachers' voice and listening to the voices of principals saying, here's one more thing that we're being asked to do. Is there a resource that would make this even easier for us to implement project-based learning within our day-to-day work or within the units of work that we're actually implementing with our students in the classroom? From that, the defined learning team, actually in person and via Zoom, was able to come to Fort Wayne, work with our staff and our district office to ensure that they clearly understood the reason of why we were using them as a resource and how they could support teachers and building principals at the building level with the implementation of project-based learning. From the principals' exposure to defined learning, the defined learning platform, because they have that wealth of knowledge around PBL, we wanted to make sure that instructional coaches, the facilitators that were supporting teachers at the building level, also had an in-depth understanding of this platform and how to support their teachers with choosing, selecting PBL projects, even the projects that's aligned to their unit, and projects that they're choosing to go even deeper with outside of their unit. And the reason we made the light area green for teachers, because we know that even we started here with the focus with cabinet, it is so important that we engage teachers, the boots on the ground that's doing this work every single day, that they have an in-depth understanding of our frame for PBL, and more so, how to use this platform when they're trying to engage their students. So with this, I know that you've heard from Dr. Daniel and myself and our voice, but I wanted to bring one of our teachers, and before that, there's a video that we're going to share with you that we actually wanted you to see teachers speaking to the implementation of PBL in the classroom, and students saying, using their voice to actually say what this platform means to them, or really what PBL means to them, and again, how they're integrating that within their curriculum. So again, this video is with our principal, Jennifer Evans, teachers and students, Bloomingdale Elementary School.
Hello, I'm Andrew Dutton, a third grade teacher at Fort Wayne Community Schools. We're doing project-based learning tasks with our students. This task is over aeronautical engineering. Our responsibility is to build and design 3 planes, one that can fly the fastest, one that can fly the farthest, and one that can stay in the air the longest.
The reason we use project-based learning is it does engage our students in a meaningful way, and it brings relevance to standards, and so they can see real-life examples of how this works in the real world, which of course helps them have a greater understanding of the standard and have an experience instead of just kind of a learning activity.
When choosing this activity, we decided to collaborate together as a third grade team. And we came up with this idea that we needed something that was fun and entertaining, but yet educational for the kids. So we chose this project because it got to show their artistic ability as well as their engineering thought process.
My favorite part about this lesson was creating a model airplane to see how it could fly.
I love this project because we get to create something that sometimes we can't create in school.
The impact of student outcomes using project-based learning is obviously extreme engagement and relevance. So when we have relevant, engaging work that brings in the state standards, we of course are going to have more engagement, which means more buy-in and also understanding the standards in a more, I would say, meaningful and in-depth way.
I learned in this activity that it's not always going to be easy to finish a task.
I created 3 different types of planes: the farthest, the longest in the air, and the most distant from my body.
One thing I learned in this lesson is we got to test airplanes because if you don't test them, they could crash and fly, and it's not safe for pilots and others.
One group of teachers that use project-based learning pretty consistently is our ELL teachers. The reason they do that is because it does help build schema and a lot of background knowledge and vocabulary, which is challenging to fit in our daily curriculum. And so this way they get to see it, live it, do it, and it really helps the vocabulary stick.
I'm excited for the end of the project, for the race, to see among all the students that the plane that goes the fastest and the farthest.
I'm looking forward to presenting our final project on social media.
One thing that I greatly appreciate about project-based learning is the teams that really are interested in that and hold on to that have built strong professional learning communities with themselves because they are really into the project and they do a lot together, and it really becomes a cohesive group, and they own all of the students, and it is a really awesome thing to see.
Thank you. Jennifer, before we go in to see if there's any Q&A, could you please turn your screen on for us, please? Hi, Jennifer.
Hello.
So again, Jennifer, thank you and your students and teachers for sharing the project that you chose. And so could you just share with the larger community how you chose this specific project from the Defined Learning platform?
Generally speaking, the team you watched is third grade, and they're a very strong team that works very well together, and they literally take turns teaching all of the students. So it's not just my homeroom. So obviously that's one way that works well. They usually start with their math and science standards. So they'll go through their math curriculum, see where they are, see what standards they need to teach. They needed to do some things about Newton's law. That's part of the reason they pulled this project, but generally speaking, they start from their state standard and their scope and sequence, and then they build from there.
Thank you. So Jennifer, any other specifics about that you would like to share with the larger group about the ease of use or how you're finding that you're able to integrate the use of Defined Learning into your work at Bloomingdale?
Sure, I do agree that what's the best part of Defined Learning is when you know what you need to teach, they already have this laid out. I do think it's a misconception that you can just kind of give this to a student. I mean, it really has to be facilitated. And so I think it leads to really strong collaboration because they walk through it, and the teachers, you'll watch them when they're getting ready, they'll model with each other. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do it that way. And so there's a lot of how and what is this going to look like? And that really just, first of all, increases teacher engagement as much as it does student engagement. So it is an easy platform to use and start. And I do think what Dr. Daniel said earlier, for instance, we did a project earlier in the year involving plants and setting up a community garden, which is also, it was on a defined learning as well. But now we actually do that. Like, we have a community garden here. We meet with the president of our neighborhood. He was just here yesterday. They're doing a plant sale for it. It started as them just plotting it and creating it, and now they actually physically do that. So we want to keep encouraging that, and it does give us good connections to the community.
Jennifer, thank you very much. I do want to share that when Jennifer said that, basically looking at math and science, one of the particulars that we looked at for Defined Learning, the platform, is that at first we just kind of let our teachers explore. And so basically they could go on the platform, choose any project that they wanted to basically have that experience with their students. What we've done now with the support of Defined Learning is that we've really looked at our math, social studies, and science standards. And we've aligned those projects so that basically math, social studies, and science will see exactly where they can integrate those projects within their scope and sequence and within their curriculum.
And I will just add this when we're talking about subjects. I think sometimes we forget that there is a strong literacy and reading component to it because of the background knowledge. Our students come in with very little schema in our building. So if you're not familiar with our building, we are a tidal building. So our kids come in with not a whole lot of schema or experiences, and it's building that. So when they do come across a text, it's helping. And I think this team shows it. I mean, our read scores have gone up 20% 2 years in a row. We went up 20 last year, 20 this year with this team. And I do think it's because they do create so many experiences that they actually remember all of those things when they come across it later, sort of not in isolation, because you know how assessments are always in isolation, but it gives them a frame of reference. So I do think it does help your reading scores as well.
Thank you, Jennifer. I see there's lots of questions, Andy, and the chat box. Are you guys want us to respond to those? Are you following up with those questions? How would you like for us to do that today?
Hi, Tracy, you are still on mute.
Thank you. I was doing all that great talking. I was thanking Ramona and team for such a robust presentation, because you were very deliberate and intentional around including student voice, and also hearing from Jennifer, the principal, because oftentimes, and we hear how it's working in the district, but like, we're like, okay, what are the kids saying, right? Like, what are the kids talking about? Gosh, when those kids were talking, I was like, I just want to be in that room with them. It's just so exciting to hear their language and hear them understanding and concept development. And then Jennifer comes behind, because people make a lot of assumptions about what schools look like that implement project-based learning. And to be clear, she talks about being at a Title I school, and we know there's characteristics around that. And what you guys clearly said was each student, Dr. Daniel said, is important, and the pathway to success, and you do that through culture, because every child can learn. And I think that's when we're talking about equity, right? Equity is how do we serve every kid? So this was wonderful. One of the questions that came up that I definitely want to ask you, because I think that it is sometimes tough on people, is can we get examples of actual application looks like, but more importantly, what does the schedule look like for teachers while still including the explicit teaching? Because I think what happened, especially in Title I schools, like you got to hit reading, math, and writing hard, right? Then anything else comes if there's time left, right? But clearly your vision is kids need to have these opportunities. So like, what does a schedule look like for you all in this? And if you want Jennifer to talk about how because she talked about the reading and the components, so that you can get all those mandatory things, because we still all live in a situation where there's some type of mandatory testing and we got to show growth, right? Any way to attack that for our audience?
So again, I think from just from central office lens for me, that could look different across the building based upon building level leadership and how they're integrating project-based learning. However, I think with having Jennifer here, I'd like for her to be able to share specifically how she's integrating that at Bloomingdale.
Yeah, and maybe Jennifer can drop her contact information in the chat box that is working. Okay. For all you out there, you can now use the chat box and you can drop your
Jennifer,
question.
I'll drop it in there for you if you want me to while you're addressing the question.
Sure. I would say I think every grade and every team is different, to be honest. So, and I also think it depends on the project. So there are some projects that, for instance, you could do every Friday and build on it based on what unit you're in. There are some projects like this one, we actually spent so many days in a row. It really just depends on the project and how it integrates into your curriculum. You don't really want it to be in isolation. I mean, there are times where that might be appropriate. Like I know my students see it as a reward when they get on defined learning, which is funny because they get on it a lot, but they see it as a reward. So sometimes like when they finish a test, the teachers will be like, we're going to start defined learning. They get really excited, even though they're still in the standards. They're still doing everything you normally would. So I really do think, I mean, obviously we're in elementary school, so we're not in like direct periods. So I wouldn't say that, but like if there are pieces that are reading, that might be a station in the reading block. If there are pieces that are whole group explicit instruction, we obviously do that first. Usually with defined learning, I would say in the elementary level, you start almost every day with a little bit of explicit instruction, and then they start to do their collaborative piece. Then the next day you'll have some more explicit instruction, then they do the collaborative piece. So it really depends. Obviously, the lower the grade level, the more explicit instruction you need.
So thank you so much for that. I think of what we know, depending on your school, depending on your district, that could look different, right? But like you can get ideas from everyone, but like how does it best serve you? But the bigger picture I hear is that the project-based learning activities by Define are helping kids. And you think about bringing the curriculum to life, Dr. Daniel said, like, it is so relevant. See it, they live it, and they do it. And it's meaningful to them. And they take that learning with them as they matriculate up. So thank you so much for being here. I love this presentation a lot because listen, I just go back to the three students in that video. What an amazing video, and talking about, well, this doesn't happen, the airplane will crash, right? Like saving lives. And we need kids to be thinkers, right, about all these things. And when you think about project-based learning and this work and these activities in the defined curriculum around project-based learning, how relevant they are. There's some favorite activities I have in there too, but like this is the first time I actually saw the one around the flight. And as we close you out today, I want to personally thank you. The road to graduation and beyond starts at pre-K. And Dr. Daniel started off talking about this work starting in pre-K. Let's not limit our children and say, well, let's wait till they're in middle school to do this work. We know that the importance the day they walk in our building helps them matriculate to the finish line of graduation and everything they take with them in life. So thank you for talking about that work in a pre-K-12 context.